We will now turn to our first session in our Marine Money London 2021 event. We will hear from 4 companies which thrived, showed courage and determination despite or in spite of the challenging conditions, and set their course for the years ahead. The first presentation is from Sovcomflot, a leading player in global oil and LNG shipping. In October 2020, Sovcomflot successfully concluded an IPO on the Moscow Stock Exchange, which effectively valued the company at $3.2 billion after the issuance of new shares with a value of about $550 million. The use of funds stated was for investments in new assets, decarbonization, and deleveraging. VTB Capital and Citi were the lead banks in the IPO, and we are happy to have with us Peter Stonor, Managing Director and Head of Transport, Infrastructure, Industrials and Utilities of VTB Capital with us today. And Peter will host an interview with Nikolai Kolesnikov, Executive Vice President and CFO of Sovcomflot, to discuss some perspectives of the IPO and the vision going forward. With that, I'd like to hand over the microphone, please, to Peter and Nikolai. Thank you.
Well, many thanks for the introduction, Kevin. Good morning to everyone online, and thank you to Marine Money for hosting today's virtual event. Well, we're delighted to have Nikolai Kolesnikov with us for this first session on shipping success stories of 2020 to discuss the Sovcomflot IPO and vision going forward. As Kevin mentioned, and as you all know, Nikolai is Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Sovcomflot. So Nikolai, 2020 was clearly a landmark year for Sovcomflot in raising over $500 million through a successful IPO, which was the largest IPO by any shipping company globally since 2013. Fantastic achievement for Sovcomflot and welcome news to the wider marine industry. So to start with, please could you talk us through the IPO experience and in particular, how you managed to execute such a complex transaction in the middle of a global pandemic?
Thank you, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to present our IPO experience. Indeed, despite all the challenges of the past year that we and the whole world faced, we did manage to accomplish this transaction, which is a very sizable equity transaction by any measure. And in many respects, it's a first of a kind transaction. Well, definitely it's the first ever virtual shipping IPO by a Russian company, or a virtual first ever Russian company IPO. Not that it came out of the blue. This is something that the company has been working on for a number of years, and the Russian state, our historic shareholder, has held us as a privatization candidate for at least the past decade. Of course, this was a turbulent decade, and until recently, market conditions prevented us from launching the process. But towards the end of 19, the decision was made, and we started working in earnest in January 2020 with a full-blown IPO preparation process, which we did have to put on hold around March as the pandemic situation started to aggravate, and that had a very negative impact on global equity markets, which corrected downwards by 30–40%. With the process being put on hold until around midsummer, by which time we did see that the markets have recovered, helped by the stimulus coming from the governments, and also in our specific case, supported by exceptionally strong tanker markets throughout Q4 19 and first half 2020. So we did then take a decision based on the guidance and advice we're getting from the underwriters to relaunch the process. We announced the deal on September 15th. We then embarked on a marketing and pre-marketing and marketing exercise, announcing the price range on 28th of September and closing the books on 6th October. And so from 7 October 2020, Sovcomflot stock is trading on the Moscow exchange with the ticker FLOT, and the post-money valuation and market cap is $3.2 billion.
Well, Nikolai, it's a fantastic achievement and great for our audience to hear. Please, could you tell us a little bit more about the deal structure and the breakdown of the demand from investors?
Yes, thank you, Peter. It was an all primary issue, so we were selling new ordinary shares, ruble-denominated shares. I mean, listed. We're a Russian legal entity with a listing on the Moscow exchange. I think the deal size has already been mentioned, $550 million US. The deal was marketed to a broad group of investors, to institutions in the US under Rule 144A, to institutional investors outside of the US under Reg S, and to institutional and retail investors in Russia. There was a stabilization provision built into the structure of the deal, with set at 10% of the offering, and a standard lockup period of 180 days for the company. In terms of the demand, I think we had the deal distributed to a good quality long-term shareholder base. About 50% of the allocations came from Russia, and the rest was distributed internationally, probably a third in the UK and elsewhere around the world, with a good mix of long-only investors, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, wealth management, private banks, and I think an interesting feature of the deal that 17% of the demand came from Russian retail investors, and that was new to us, and we very much welcomed that interest demonstrated by Russian retail investors in Sovcomflot story. So that's the structure in a nutshell.
Well, again, it's a great outcome and clearly a very innovative process. So what do you think attracted this wide universe of investors to the Sovcomflot story?
Well, I think the story itself, I think what investors probably found appealing is our market position, the scale of the business. It's obviously a sizable fleet and a big asset base, our leadership position in a number of core shipping segments, specialist segments with good marginality of the business. Secondly, our long-established track record, our blue chip customer base, and our operational platform and the skill sets that the company is able to offer its customers. I think our specialization in provision of marine services in ultra harsh environment, heavy ice, Arctic, subarctic areas was something that people found interesting, as it does create high entry barriers for competition and positions us favorably to capture new business. I think the growth potential, that's again something that investors have been repeatedly asking, and obviously we were able to demonstrate that with a very healthy backlog of future contracted revenues in excess of $20 billion and a good pipeline of new business coming from our core customers. And on top of that, I think it's a well capitalized business with strong financials and good credit metrics, with our net debt to EBITDA standing at below 3 times. We were showing last 12 months EBITDA in excess of $1 billion. So I think our ability to run the business despite all the operational challenges that the global economies were facing during the COVID time were again another factor that put people positively disposed to our offering.
Great. So a great story with many tractions for investors. I'm sure our audience will be also interested to hear what you see as the main benefits of an IPO for Sovcomflot and for now being a more public rather than private company.
Well, I think obviously I already mentioned that it's an all primary issue. So obviously we were able to recapitalize the company. This is something that obviously we need to do as we want to continue to demonstrate the pace of growth that we've demonstrated historically. And over the past 10, 15 years, we've basically quadrupled the size of the company measured by our earnings. And to continue to do so and to develop and grow at the same pace, we definitely need to have access to fresh equity. And now that our stock is in the public domain, obviously we are able to do repeat equity transactions. I think it does diversify the sources of funding for the business. It complements the sources of debt financing that the company has enjoyed over the years. It does help to raise our profile. I mean, not only in the investor community, but also in the business community. So it does help us to win new business with our core customers, who are all public companies themselves. And of course, obviously, it crystallizes the value of Sovcomflot equity, which is obviously relevant for our historic shareholder. It also sets an additional new measurement tool to assess management performance. It makes our performance more transparent, and I think it's also a very valuable line of communication for management, because we are now able to get feedback not only from our business partners and our financial partners, but from our equity investors as well. So all positives.
So clearly, all positives, and clearly many benefits to being a listed company now. And then I'd like to ask what you see as the key lessons that you personally learned from going through the IPO process, Nikolai.
Well, personally, and I think for our team and for the company, I think it has been a new, interesting, very exciting experience. I think the key thing that I've taken away from this is that ultimately the success or failure of an IPO depends first and foremost on the strengths of the underlying business. So I think it's the equity story that will or will not appeal to investors, and investors are very rational, very sharp, extremely focused, and extremely busy people. They will not be carried away by dramatic images of your ice-breaking shuttle tankers plowing through Arctic ice. I mean, the times when you could basically tell the story by comparing the lengths of your tankers to the height of the Empire State Building or Eiffel Tower are long gone. So you need to have a very strong and sustainable business case, and then that business case needs to stand up. The second thing I'd mention is that an IPO makes you very humble, because you go into this process thinking that you're running the best ever company, and you're having an unbeatable value proposition to the investors, and suddenly you have a reality check when the feedback can be totally different, because obviously investors will put you in line, put you in queue with other investment propositions that they face every day, and with that, I mean, they will basically adjust your expectations and will not be shy to do so. I think what we also discovered is that the shipping industry, as we all know, has a very checkered history with the equity capital markets, and whether we like it or not, but as a newcomer, you will be given the benefit of doubt, but at the same time you will be held responsible and guilty by association with all the previous instances when equity investors lost money or didn't make enough money on their shipping investments, and you will have to try to differentiate yourself and make sure that your story is different and people do understand that, and it implies an education process, because many investors will not be as familiar with the industry as they are with other industries they're used to investing in. And also, I think lastly, critically important is that you need to have a very strong team of advisors working on the deal. This is critically important. In our case, the banks, the underwriters did a terrific job. Well, not only the banks, but also the whole team. I mean, the legal counsels, our auditors, and other professional services firms. So I'm extremely grateful to VTB Capital. They've been standing by and supporting us through this process. And likewise, the other underwriters, Citi, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Sberbank, and ING as managers of this transaction. So this is something that cannot be underestimated.
Thanks, Nikolai, and I can see Kevin's there. So I have time for one more question, Kevin, or do we need to?
No, not from you. Just a quick question from me, just to finish off, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, no problem.
So, Nikolai, I mean, Sovcomflot were reported to be considering an IPO for quite some time, actually, a few years, and one place that you considered, or it was reported that you were considering, was London, and clearly that didn't happen. I wonder if you could just comment on your choice of the Moscow exchange as the best place to for Sovcomflot to do the IPO.
Kevin, it's an interesting point, and if you asked me this question at the Marine Money Forum in London 2 years ago, when we were contemplating different exchanges, I would have said that I would have loved to list in the US, but it was not possible at the time because of the US government shutdown, and the offices of the SEC were closed. So we did not take this risk this time, and based on the advice we were getting from the lead banks, we felt that the natural listing venue for us is the Moscow exchange. And we've assured ourselves that all the global institutions are capable and able to buy into locally listed Sovcomflot equity. So I think for now, I think this is the listing venue, and we've been advised against split equity with a secondary listing. For now, I think it's the primary listing is the Moscow exchange.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but Peter and Nikolai, thank you very much for an interesting discussion. Looking forward to meeting you in person very soon. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.